All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Blueprint Leadership Podcast. I'm Wright, your 18th Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, and I want to say thank you for joining us. Our guest today is a good personal, close personal friend and colleague. He is the Command Senior Enlisted Leader for NSA and Cyber Command, and I'll say he is the very first Command Senior Enlisted Leader to reach out to me. Surprisingly, when I got the job as the Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. And so subsequently, he was a DIA SEL at the time, and that was the first place I went to. But like I said, now he is the SEL for NSA Cybercom, Master Gunnery Sergeant Scott Stalker.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me today, brother. To be invited from my own service is always nice, but for another service to invite me to do this, what an honor. I'm really looking forward to it, so thank you.
Yeah, man. No, thank you. You've been a friend to all of us, certainly to the Air Force, and I want to say thank you for all that you've done, not just as as a colleague, but as a friend as well. So, hey, why don't we start with tell us about your journey, man. So first and foremost, a little bit different that you're a Master Gunnery Sergeant in the Marine Corps, but how did you get to be in this senior leadership role? I mean, what's your journey been like?
Right. So let me know how far back you want to go. But I was born in New Hampshire and grew up there. My father was in the Army. We moved to California, and academics was something that came fairly simple to me, which is both a good and a bad. The bad part of it was I did not develop a work ethic, and so I was able to breeze through. I actually struck an agreement with my principal at high school and said, hey, how about I take this work home and I'll finish early? And so I was able to finish school a year early and go to the Corps when I was 17. Wanted to do nothing but go into infantry. I signed up to be an 03 infantryman, and then they give you these interesting tests. And as I say it, I was sober that day, so I did well. And so they said, hey, we're going to sell you on this intel thing. And it sounded good. I thought I was going to be the next James Bond. And so for a long time, I was prepped to do that. The bad part, as I alluded to earlier, was the lack of work ethic. And so what's interesting in our business is we kind of get to edit our bio. Usually we don't put the negatives in there. Mm-hmm. And so when I went to intel school, I didn't try at all. I figured I easily can breeze through things. These are simple. And so I graduated dead last. I was 30th of 30. And wow. Yeah, so I checked in, so I didn't get to select what unit I went to. I didn't get an opportunity to pick what I was going to do next, and I wanted to deploy. And I went to a unit in North Carolina that was not going to go anywhere short of all-out war. Luckily, I was, and to this day, I'm still mentored by this gentleman, Bob Howard. He sat me down and he said, listen, this is the path you're on, but this is how you can get to where you want to go. And I just quickly changed my pattern of life, and so started being the first guy into the office every day, reading, get ahead, and then suddenly luck happened. Things started happening. It's amazing how preparation leads to luck. An individual hurts his ankle, and next thing you know, I find myself deployed. So I got to do that in a various amount of joint billets from there, and then I think in 2010, when I had just pinned on Master Gunny, life changed, and we get into this technical and leadership position. Mm-hmm. And I had the opportunity. I was serving in special operations at the time, and I'm briefing General Stewart, 1-star at the time, and it went well. It went well because I was the subject matter expert on this particular thing, and we were creating a special operations MOS. We developed that relationship, and then a few years later, he got selected to be the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I was told in no short terms by the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, put a package in, which in our culture is not ever how it's done. Mm-hmm. And it's just not. Roger that. I put a package in, and General Stewart selected me.
Yeah.
And, I thought, okay, great. I'm going to do this for 3 years. 22 months later, the same Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, Ron Green, calls me and says, you're going to be the nominee for this position. And so did like most of us do. And my number one thing is just prepare and be your best version of you. And I always try to focus on those fundamentals, those basic things, prep for the interview. And I got a call, and it was odd. Imagine you're on leave with your wife, and the director of the National Security Agency calls, and hey, this is the director of the National Security Agency. I need to speak to you. I'm like, oh, my God. But he told me he wanted to bring me on board, and I asked him why later. And he said, Master Guns, the interview process is a formality.
Yeah.
It really is how you interviewed through your career, your reputation that you build. You define your last name, and so that allowed me to get here. It's a culture shock in my service in many ways. There may even be some people that don't like it. I could care less, to be frank.
Yeah.
I'm just going to execute and be the best version of me. So that's kind of how I got into this.
You know what? I want to come back to that, but I want this whole Master Guns versus Sergeant Major thing that you guys have going in the Marine Corps. By the way, which I want to get some advice from you on something that I've been thinking about for the Air Force. But earlier on, you said something about, and then I got lucky, and so I certainly don't necessarily believe in luck. I'm kind of a believer that everything happens for a reason. The wise old turtle in Kung Fu Panda said, there are no mistakes, and certainly it's not a mistake that you made it here. But I've also heard people say, hey, luck is where is a combination of preparation and opportunity.
Yeah.
And I would say that's been the case for you. And what would you say to young Marines, young service members that maybe have some chips against them or didn't have a work ethic or that you were missing initially in terms of, how they might go forward and achieve their goals?
Right. You're exactly right, because I was preparing, but I wasn't preparing for something specifically. I just wanted to be a good intelligence analyst. I mean, I was a PFC. I was an E2. And where the luck came in was because I had developed a reputation, and my gunnery sergeant knew that, hey, Stalker's showing me something here. He's performing. And then an individual got injured. A few months later, I found myself on the streets of Afgoye Road in Somalia, and that was in '94. And that was a great opportunity for me. And so what I tell people all the time is, and we just had General Powell visit last week, and he said, listen, don't try to mimic my career because it's not gonna work out. And the same thing with me is the path was jaggedy and all over the place. Wherever I was sent, I just tried to really change the culture of that organization, perform as well as I could. And I tell people all the time, when they have an option, seek the hardest option. That's how you're going to grow. If there's any airmen listening today, I would say, what are the units that are struggling the most? You should be volunteering to go there. You change that culture instead of looking at the culture and say that they're all messed up. I want to go to the shiny object. That's easy. You can't grow from that. And I sometimes use the powerlifting analogy. We can go to the gym and lift the bar. Mm-hmm. We can go do that again tomorrow and the next day, and I'm going to be really good at lifting the bar. But until I introduce stress and hard work, and that's how you're going to grow. And it's the same thing for the positions we're in. Someone would say you're lucky. No, you worked hard to get here too.
Yeah. Well, you're a big dude, man. I'm a little dude, so I'm gonna just keep lifting the bar. You can put the weights on. I'll keep lifting the bar. Hey, I'm also intrigued by. I'm going to ask you to describe your leadership style, but before that, I want to just kind of tell you how I see it. Like I mentioned in the intro, you reached out to me when I got selected to be the job. We had never met before, right. But you sent me a nice note, invited me to come over to DIA, and then I went over, and then subsequently you invited not just me, but other Air Force leaders and other senior leaders across the Air Force. You were always hosting these very informative sessions for us to learn about what was happening in the world. And then you've done the same thing at NSA, Cybercom. And then from a personal standpoint, I would say about once every 2 weeks, I get a text message from you. Sometimes it's just a checkup. Sometimes it's informing me about an airman that might be in your formation, but is ultimately an airman. And as well as inviting me over to your house.
Yeah.
And I've been to your house and had some drinks and had a good time. I just think that is so important as a leader to have that level of engagement and outreach and relationship building. And I'll just say this to you. It feels authentic, right? I've had senior leaders that go through all that type of stuff, but it feels fake.
Yeah.
And it feels authentic, and I see you not just as an important colleague in what we do for the service, but certainly as a friend. How would you describe your leadership style?
Well, first, thank you for that. I think the thing I try to reflect on is that I have to live the example. And so whether you were to come to my house at 2:30 in the morning, and I would say, "What the heck you doing here?" or right now, I'm Scott,
Yeah.
and I am a Master Gunnery Sergeant, but I'm Scott, and so just being authentic to who you are. I think too often people try to be, I need to be like the Chief Master on the Air Force, Chief Wright or Stalker. Just be authentic to you, and that hard work and that it comes there. For me personally, I'm not interested. I mean, I don't know what you could, short of giving me a nice bottle of bourbon or something. There's nothing to receive out of it, but I am genuinely interested in your success and everyone in this room's success and doing well because I'm all in this. And the chairman, when he came and spoke to us a few months back, he said something about preserving great power peace.
Mhm.
We're not going to get there if we're all trying to be our own silos of excellence and trying to pull the rope in a different manner. And so I do try to be genuine with these. And there's a lot we're doing in the cyber domain at the agency. And when I was at DIA, there's an awful lot. And I know how your job is pulling you into the man, train, and equip and a lot of other things you're doing. And if there's an opportunity for you to just see not just what your airmen are doing, but what the Joint Force is doing, I think that we take advantage of that, and it makes you a better version of you. And I get some airmen that are excited to see you, and why not? It's a win-win. So I'm going to keep doing that. That's what I like to do. I saw the SEAC just before you and mentioned we're going to get him up at some point. Take advantage of that when you can.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Let's go back to this Master Guns and Sergeant Major. I won't say versus Sergeant Major.
Yeah.
So man, what you're doing is unheralded, right? This is I don't know that, and I can't say for sure, but that a Master Gunnery Sergeant in the Marine Corps has ever held a position certainly as high and as important as the one that you're in. And it took a little bit of, you broke some glass to be able to get to this position. Now, to most of us outside of the Marine Corps, shit, we don't know. I mean, we vaguely know that there are 2 tracks in the Marine Corps, but and it's not that big of a deal. It's probably a big deal to most people within the Marine Corps. I would just say amongst all of the service senior enlisted leaders and the combatant command senior enlisted leaders and all of the combat support agencies, like the most senior people in the military, you're one of the most respected dudes at the table, as when we all come together, and not just when we're together, but when we have discussions and when we need to reach out and all this other stuff. Tell me about this whole Master Guns Sergeant Major.
Yeah, it's you're right. So let me tell you, the 4 stars could care less.
Yeah.
The other services, depending on where I'm going, sometimes you can get a very big head in some of these positions. And one of the things I've tried to do is, you're an old school football player fan, Barry Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Patriots fan, but I will tell you what I loved about Barry Sanders is his touchdown celebration. He handed the ball to the ref. He acted like he'd been there before, and so I try to carry myself. And I get a lot of accolades, and I'll tell you, come November when it's Marine Corps ball season, I get more invites than I can do events, and so I'm honored, but I can't allow that to get to my head. I think the shame in this will be, though, is I don't mind being the first, but if I'm the last.
Yeah.
Because we got a lot of smart, talented Master Gunnery Sergeants in the Marine Corps. We got a lot of talent spread across the Joint Force. What General Stewart gave me was the opportunity. And I find it ironic that it was a black gentleman from Jamaica that gave me my opportunity. But him and I remain close friends. I was texting with him last night and picking on him about his beard. But it's getting that opportunity. And like I said, all your airmen that are in the formations today, they're defining their last name. They're developing their reputation. They're interviewing for your job, like it or not. And at some point, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force is going to show you a list of names that's going to be looked at. And you may not select that person, but there may be 1 or 2 you say, hey, I would stay away from that person.
Yeah.
So the technical track is
Yeah, so let's start.
Yeah,
Let's to go back a little
please.
bit, and for airmen or other folks who may not understand that there are two kind of leadership tracks in
Yeah.
the Marine Corps. Just kind of real quick explain that this
Okay.
whole thing.
Yeah, so at Gunnery Sergeant, your fitness report, you put an F on it or an M, not female or male, but you put whether you're going to go the first sergeant route or the master sergeant route.
So Gunnery Sergeant is E7 in the Marine
E7,
Corps,
E7.
right?
So
Okay.
master sergeant for you, and whatever you're selected for, at that point, that is what you are forever. You will never cross over. I've had people ask me all the time, "Hey, when are you going to pin on sergeant major?" It doesn't go that way,
Right.
nor do I need to. So you either stay in your MOS, your AFS, or you stay and you go the leadership route, admin leadership type route. We did that. We started that, I believe, in 1948 because of we went from E7 to E8 and E9, and we created these positions. But initially, the Master Guns was at Operations Chief, and that's how that was developed. And then the Sergeant Major was doing more administrative things. So once you're a first sergeant, your only option is to be a sergeant major if you get selected, and master sergeant goes the Master Gunnery Sergeant route. Stays within the MOS, doesn't perform command type positions. But the nature of war is changing, and the nature of how we conduct operations is changing. And I think there are some domains, special operations, you need a little bit of credibility, you need a little bit of subject matter expertise. And I don't know many people that can get dropped into Fort Meade and start speaking this cyber and SIGINT language without some background there. And I think that's just going to be more and more. We're going to have to look at that. And space is another one. My goodness, you show up to there on day one to lead that organization, you're going to struggle. Yeah.
So we have a lot of airmen that have been asking us in the Air Force for warrant officers.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they just want to be a warrant officer, but what I think they're asking for is they want to continue beyond E6 doing the thing that they love, being a cyber warrior, being a maintainer or a contracting officer or whatever it is. And we explored the warrant officer thing, and we just kind of concluded that, hey, this is not going to work. We're not going to bring warrant officers back to the Air Force.
Yeah.
But then I started looking at, hey, well, maybe we should do like the Marine Corps. I'm kind of looking for your advice and opinion on whether we in the Air Force should have a dual track like you guys have in the Marine Corps.
So it's interesting because there are some in my service who are saying, hey, do we need to bring it back to how it was in the past? My thoughts, and they ask me about the Air Force warrant officer a lot as well. First, what are you solving? What problem are you trying to solve? What I would offer to you is the Air Force has really sharp technical experts. What I think the services should consider is opportunities to actually do your job at a certain rank. And so what I mean by that is my last exec was a Persian Farsi linguist. But at E7, he wasn't actually doing that anymore. He was more managing the field. And so I think we've got to look at opportunities to have those subject matter experts doing the actual work, and then a potential leadership. Maybe that's a dual track. I'm not sure, but it seems like to me an awful lot of wasted investment if you look at it from a business model. To invest language, to invest coding and all these schools and dollars into someone, and then they touch a rank, hey, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so if I had not done this, I would certainly still be doing intelligence, and all my peers are still doing that. And so it works. And what I would offer to you is where I think you need to have a difference is a flexibility and opportunity, because you have, and we know who these individuals are, men and women, exceptional subject matter experts that would also make good command chiefs, and vice versa. And if you can't put it on and take it back off, similar to like the Army, you sometimes lose that. You lose the incentive and the desire to stay in. And there's sometimes, you get a good command chief, maybe they need a break. And okay, we're going to put you here in the A2 for a couple years. And not that it's a break, but it's a different opportunity. So flexibility is key to that, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, man. We'll keep exploring it. We got a team of folks that's been looking at it, and I definitely appreciate
the Chief Master Gunnery Sergeant of the Air Force. There we go.
I like it.
Heard it here first. Breaking news.
We've been struggling with suicide, and we've been talking a lot about resilience in the Air Force. Amongst the many things that you and I have partnered and consulted each other on is this topic because of some of our airmen and some of your in the NSA cybercom domain and having dealt with not just ideations but completed suicides and stuff. What's your take on all this, and what should or could we be doing differently?
Yeah, I think first off, it's heartbreaking, and it's happened to a family member of mine as well. And it's I think listen, we're doing the things we need to do. We're going to have policy. The Chief of Staff of the Air Force, the SecDef, and those senior leaders, and we as leaders as well have to discuss this. But we have to create a culture and an environment where an E1, E2 have the moral courage to act.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way you can see the entire Air Force. I can see the entire command and agency. But I need people to act. And when they see things, have the moral courage to step aside and say, hey, I don't know, the chief's not looking right, or the master guns, or whoever. That's how we're going to solve this, with a proactive approach, not sitting back and waiting for it to come to us. We've got to get aggressive as warfighters.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to take the fight to suicide and see what we can do proactively. And then, when we have those toxic leaders or those leaders who brush this off, we've got to engage with them directly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think they set the environment. I've always said, I genuinely say, I thank God I get to go to work. I enjoy this opportunity, not I have to go to work. And,
Mm-hmm.
and if you ever wake up and think, man, I got to do this again, it's probably time to look for something else. And so I'm always a believer in the aggressive approach. Tackle it head on. Let's punch it in the face. And maybe that's not the perfect analogy, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's set the conditions where we have leaders.
It's a good analogy. You still a Marine, man. So,
I'm a Marine. I love to hit things, and I'm somewhat good at it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's tough. I was just watching something the other night, and it was Belichick and Bill Belichick and Nick Saban. They were talking, and I think it was on Amazon. And it reminded me of something you posted. Bill Belichick gets on the airplane, and he's got all these coaches that are reviewing a loss, and they're looking at tape and video and so on and so forth. And he said, "What are you idiots doing? This is the basics. We didn't block, we didn't tackle."
Yeah.
That's what we've got to do with all of these challenges, and we've got to hit this head on. We've got to block and tackle. We got to set the conditions, empower our leaders, get rid of some of this stigma. If anyone's listening, listen. You don't lose your access and clearance for this. You lose your access and clearance for committing a crime, not for a mental wound, not for a physical wound.
Mm-hmm.
It's heartbreaking. I've got an airman, and this. I won't mention his name. He's at Walter Reed right now and going through some things. He is so positive that he has told me, "Listen, you better have a seat for me because I'm gonna get fixed and we're gonna go back to the fight." And I said, "Amen. I'm gonna have you there."
Yeah.
I want to be able to have that positivity translated throughout the force.
Yeah. So we ask a lot of, and we talk a lot about, hey, how do we help our airmen build resilience, and how do we keep them in the fight, and how do we help them move through? How do you help yourself, right? So you have you sit in the catbird seat and you get to see and hear about all these things. And man, being a SEL of a major combatant command it's tough.
Yeah.
And agency, the NSA, like, how do you keep yourself sane? How do you keep yourself, strong and resilient and able to get through every day?
Yeah. So a few things. I tend to try. I really want to elevate what we think of as SELs, because I've talking when I speak to older individuals that have served. They assume that I'm out making sure folks have haircuts and that sort of thing. And I'm really focused on being that hybrid leader who I can walk and talk about the operational environment, but I also understand the leadership piece very well. And I've always had this approach. I call it kind of the Vegas approach to life. And what I mean by that is in Vegas, there are nice big buildings and there's all these nice casinos. Those exist because people go there and they make bad decisions. And so in life, what I've tried to do is when I see a set of options, I tend to go where others aren't going. And so, for example, resilience. I look at little things. You take the coronavirus, for example. The advice that I'm hearing is counter to what I do in life. And I haven't been sick in probably 30 years. And so I tend to not believe in always washing your hands. You need to develop you need to train and strengthen your immune system, your antibodies, your all those elements. That goes throughout everything. And so I try to prioritize. There's way too many things to do in the day. What are those 2 or 3 fundamental things? Focus on those. I say I can multitask, but I can't multi-execute. And so I don't multi-do, but let's focus on 1 or 2 things. And then the SecDef has told us that his number 1 priority is readiness. Well, if that's the case, then physical fitness needs to be during my workday.
Yeah.
And so I make sure it's on my schedule. I make sure my teammates, the Master Sergeant, my Petty Officer, you'll PT during the workday. Nothing's so important that you can't break away and go get a sweat on. So that tends to charge me. And especially if I can do it in the middle of the day, now I'm strong for the other side, because there's an awful lot of evening events. This weekend I've got an event, and I know you're the same way. And if you're not building that resilience, if you're not introducing, like I said, the germs and allowing your body to be strong, when those things happen and hit, you're going to be weaker.
Yeah.
So
I think our SG community, the medics, might have an issue with your.
I'm just telling you, I never get sick. I'm a believer in allow your. Do I wash my hands? Of course. Do I shower? Yeah, so you're not here with Pigpen, but I do think that you got to train your system a little bit.
I agree, man. That makes sense. Hey, one thing we like to do here on the show is we like to take questions from the internet, and sometimes we get them from Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, and a few other sources. And so I'm going to turn it over to CMAS Sergeant Harry Kibbe, and he's got a few questions.
Thank you very much, Chief. Master Gunnery Sergeant Stalker, our questions today are coming from the Reddit community. A lot of cyber warriors in that community, and they jumped at the chance to get your answers to these 3 questions. Question number 1 is from someone named Unnamed Warrior. And Unnamed Warrior X, actually, sorry. They want to know, what practices of the USMC cyber training process should we in the Air Force adopt, in your opinion?
So the reason I said, oh no, there was an individual named, I think it was a concerned warrior who was really not happy that I was a Master Gunny doing this. So first off, thanks for that. Let me tell you, I would say that the Air Force model is actually a really good model. And I mean that because if you look at how the percentage of what we retain, the Air Force is doing the best in that retention. That is the challenge in this. I can bring in a lot of talent. I can recruit. When I say obviously the services, and they provide that talent to Cyber Command. Where we need to make sure they realize is the mission they are on, how important it is. And I was joking with Chief Lifer the other day. You think of Air Force Cyber, how many 4-stars do they belong to? 7. The Chief of Staff of the Air Force, ACC, and then 5 other combatant commands to include Cyber Command. That just alone tells you how important they are. And oh, by the way, they're focused on our number 1 mission, which is election security. Focus on the mission. We're keeping in the talent. If you look at the attrition rates from the schools, you're always at the top in terms of the best there. So the only thing, if I were to offer a point, would be there has to be a warfighter mindset to this. We're not doing this for the sake of doing this. We're doing this in order to provide outcomes to leaders.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Captain Morale asks, and I think maybe Captain Morale has the wrong impression about you. You're not an older gentleman. But Captain Morale wants to know, what should a military leader focus on once they've entered the back 9?
Okay, that's a really good conversation. It's interesting. I just had that discussion with our former Commandant General Neller. We were at Keystone together a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned that he had probably not done it the right way. I think there's a lot of things. One, at some point, we're all going to get out. We're either going to retire, we're going to do 4 years, we're going to do 40 years in the case of Chief Wright, or
32.
So there's a few things. One, you've got to take care of your health. And the way you train as an older gentleman, and I appreciate the captain saying that, but I think I'm 45 now. I don't really keep track anymore. The way you do that is not the same way you train as an 18-year-old. The way you rest and recuperate. And so I'm an individual who enjoys powerlifting. I'm going to try to compete one more time, and my wife has done this as well. We're not in there for 2-3 hours a day. You get in there real quick. You break down the muscle fibers, and then you refuel, you rest. And so I focus really hard on my rest. I really, really do. And there's a point of time where it's short of the boss calling me or someone, I'm out. Don't let me be. Be mindful of that time and don't halfway rest. So you see people, they got their phones or that's what, be present in the sleep, and then refueling. This gets to the earlier point about, washing your hands all the time. When was the last time you went to medical and they prescribed you an orange and a long walk? Those are the things that are going to keep you going in this game is good food. And then don't take it so serious, right? And that's hard for me because I am a little serious in this game. But hey, laugh a little bit, enjoy yourself. This is hard enough as it is. Don't take yourself so serious. Do not read your own headlines. Do not read your own headlines. Enough people tell me how amazing I am. I'm going to try to keep the Barry Sanders approach.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking more about that is since you like to bring the germs into your system, do you have a 5-second or a 5-minute rule? Food drops on the floor, you're going to pick it up right away and eat it?
I'll eat anything once. I was in Mongolia and I had a dehydrated yak milk curd.
Oh, wow.
And I was with the boss and he said, I'm not trying that. So I tried it. I'll try anything once, food-wise. And yeah, I don't follow my philosophy. You may have to edit that piece on it. I'm just telling you what works. I'm just telling you what works.
Yeah. Okay. Our last question for you, Master Gunnery Sergeant, is from Red October Standing, and they would like to know, with the way the military is going with innovation and open sourcing some data, will there ever be a leniency on installing hardware or software? That's a cyber question.
Yeah. I think there's always going to listen, there's those rules exist for plugging things in because there are vulnerabilities. There's always going to be a need for policy and those types of things to protect our environment. The adversary, to get a little bit down the cyber lane, understands that it's easiest to get in through weak areas. And so, again, back to the fundamentals, those basics. Cyber hygiene is just the basics. Don't click on the link, have a strong password, do those basic things. And then a lot of the other things that we have to do, we don't have to focus on. We don't have to spend resources and effort doing so. I don't see a world where we're going to get away from that. I don't know specifically what he's getting at. I live in a very good world. I don't have my phone with me ever. I can't bring it into the building. And so I'm not doing a lot of those things. And then obviously when I'm sleeping, I don't play with it as well. And so the answer is no. I don't see a time that we're just going to be able to bring our own stuff in and plug and play, especially in certain areas where you have classified.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
No
With good
problem.
reason.
Yeah.
All right. If you guys want to get an answer or answer to some of your questions, you can always reach us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Thank you very much. And back to you, Chief Wright.
Yeah. Thanks, Harry. You mentioned then during, I think it was the second answer, not to take yourself too serious, not to take yourself too serious. What do you do for fun, man?
Well, I would love to golf more, and we're going to play some point, and maybe when we're old retired men, but I genuinely love that. There's nothing more fun than getting out, making sure the phones are away, and just playing and being Scott Stalker with guys that know me as Scott and that sort of thing. When my wife's pregnant now, I started a later marriage which worked great for me.
Mm-hmm.
What I really enjoyed was lifting with her because again, she was a competitive power lifter. She owns a couple state records, and her photos in this Hall of Fame here in the building still. So I love lifting with her because she's one of the few people who will look me in the eye and say, "Hey, no, you didn't give it all. I can tell."
Yeah.
And then lastly, I get home fairly late usually. When my daughter runs up and sees me, she can't talk yet. She's 13 months or 14 months now. That makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so those little things, I don't need to be going out and partying like I did back in the day. I just those little things, I enjoy it.
Yeah, nice, man.
Yeah.
What about you? You are. I thought I was an avid reader and consumer of world and leadership material. I would say, man, you are like you're the gold standard when it comes to reading and learning, and not just that, but sharing. I think I get a book recommendation from you about once a month or so. Always really, really good stuff that stretches me because you always recommend stuff to me that I think you probably know the stuff that I'm reading, the Simon Sinek's and the leadership development, but most of your recommendations are kind of in the world, economics and politics and war fighting stuff. So really good stuff that stretches me. What are you reading right now? And what have you always been this way? I know you said you were good at education, but
No, I wasn't always this way because I didn't need to be. And for whatever reason, school, like I said, was simple. But I knew I needed to change. And you and I talked about a book, and I think sometimes I get a funny look for recommending this book, but the autobiography of Malcolm X. You take an individual whose father was probably murdered by the KKK, who grew up and his mother had her kids taken from her from the state. So by all methods and means had a horrible deck of cards played against him and started trending down the wrong way. He decided to make a change in life and became an influential leader, someone today, and to the point that he became such an influential leader, the individuals that brought him into that network took his life. So reading to me is a matter of, again, prioritization. I have the great opportunity to sit in DC traffic, and it's beautiful. If you never had the opportunity, give it a try. But what it does give you is you're a captured audience. You're in that vehicle,
right?
And so I can bitch and complain about that, or I can say let's do some reading. And I just finished up a book, Prisoner's Geography, which laid out in 10 really clean, easy to read chapters, culturally why the world is how it is, why certain pieces of geography are fundamental to our defense and that sort of thing. And it's on the list that I handed you today.
Okay.
It's a good read. I read a lot of philosophy. The book I gave you, Epictetus, I just will pull a couple of chapters and read occasionally from him because it gets you, it's a mindset. And again, the mindset could be, man, this sucks. I'm in traffic, or let me take advantage of this opportunity. I'll be frank with you. I'm not reading to the level that I'd like right now because I'm full-time. This is my last 4 weeks of being a full-time grad student, and then I'll only have one class to go. And I'm just trying to pass. I'm trying to power through that. But General Kelly, when he was my mentor in Keystone, he was a voracious reader, and he was always telling me what to read. And what I have seen is those individuals that are successful in life, they're usually not spending their hours sitting on the couch watching television. They're professionally developing themselves, and they're not comfortable with where they are. They're continuing to try to learn and grow. So it's a big thing to me, and I'm going to continue to do that. Some people will take the recommendations, others won't. I'm always interested in other books that I should be reading as well. I've got more on the list than I can actually get to right now, but if you have a great recommendation, please send it my way.
Yeah. I would say, and you probably already read this, but Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers, man.
I have not yet.
It's fantastic. I think you'll like it.
I heard his podcast about David and Goliath. Wow, what a perspective.
Yeah.
If you haven't, I can't do any justice to it. But anything Malcolm Gladwell writes, I'm absorbing.
Yeah, his newest book, Talking to Strangers, and I would recommend, to you and anybody that's listening, the audiobook is a better option than the
because he does the voice, right?
He does the voice, and in this particular book, everywhere he uses the actual audio from. So if he's talking about Aldrich Ames, he uses stuff from there. He talks about Hitler, and he uses some stuff from Great Britain back in the in the 40s and whatnot. So it's really interesting concept. But
I'll check it out.
Yeah, I always say leaders are learners, and like I said, man, you are really setting the pace for a lot of us in the senior leadership realm, in terms of developing ourselves and becoming the best version of who we are in order to take care of all of the service members that we're responsible for.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Anything you want to pass along to the audience before we wrap up?
We talked an awful lot. I think what I would say for a few points is there are those that are senior enlisted leaders and those that are cheerleaders. It gets back to don't take yourself so serious. Don't be the cheerleader. No, you're not going to be authentic. No one's going to follow you, and you can just be the best version of you. I think. I spent some time with a special operations unit a few months ago and visited them, and they're known for just being elite at what they do. And I talked to the commander after, and I said, "Sir, what makes you guys so special, so amazing?" And he said, "Master Guns, we're not special. We're not. we're brilliant at the basics.
Mm.
And I think too often we try to get carried away with memorizations of Air Force Order X, Y, and Z, or DOD, so on and so forth. Get to the basics, get to the fundamentals. What are you trying to deliver as an outcome? And I saw this at Keystone. We would have slides on the board, and you almost couldn't understand what they were saying. And really what they were saying is conduct a mission. Okay, we get that, but we tried to overstate the points. I just try to get to the fundamentals and the basics on things and not make things so difficult, because this world of warfighting and cyber especially can confuse the heck out of you if you allow it to.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the advice I would give everyone.
Yeah, I one of the most influential and one of the individuals that really inspired me over the last 20 years or so was Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
Who we just recently lost. And I posted a thing on Facebook the other day where someone made a video of him, but it was essentially how he said fall in love. The reason that he was so good is because he learned to fall in love with the basics.
Yeah.
You know, the basics of basketball and footwork and whatnot. So brilliance in the basics, falling in love with the basics, man. That's sound advice.
Absolutely.
Hey, last thing.
Yeah.
Because I think you've done a good job at this. We currently have 4 generations in our military, from baby boomers to Gen Xers like you and I, to millennials, and then the Gen Zers, who are our youngest service members. And you seem to have done a good job of connecting and being able to understand and connect with all of them. Lots of discussion about this new generation of airmen, always asking why and this and that. You know, you have an opinion about our youngest airmen that are coming in there in the air service? I'll say service members that are coming in the Air Force.
Yeah, I do. I find it odd because I'll usually hear about this new thing called texting or social media. And, the reason I'm actually on social media is because of my grandmother. She said, "Hey, Scott, what, you're not following me?" And I said, "Oh, my goodness." So it's interesting. I think we get so wrapped around those generational things and whatnot. They want to serve. They ask to serve,
Mm-hmm.
and to a point. When I came in, we weren't actively at war. Most everyone, probably 90% of the folks that are in today, signed up during post 9/11 or during, and so they bring a patriotism and a pride that I think we should capture and we should be proud of. I am not a revisionist person. I am not interested in focusing on the past too much. You rarely will hear me get into all that. Knowing the history is key, and I certainly understand the traditions of the Marine Corps and all those types of things. But I'm going to take the group that you give me and all the other services, and I want to make them the best team possible, and I want to see them succeed. They may take a different path. And allow them to make a couple mistakes, so long as they're not harming others or breaking laws. But when we try to say, "Hey, Sonny, this is how it's always done, and this is the only way to do it," we're really smashing the spirit, and we're not allowing them to bring their talents. And listen, at some point, you and I are going to be finished, and if we haven't given them the opportunity to grow, shame on us.
Yeah.
And if you think that the only people that can mentor you are those that are senior in rank, well, then you and I are screwed, right? So we can just get to SEAC. And so they mentor me as well. They do.
Yeah.
They're really, really sharp individuals. The Marine Corps, just after I finished boot camp, introduced this thing called the Crucible. I didn't go through that.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I've got to go back through. I don't know, but so I don't view the current generation as softer or weaker.
Right.
Are they different? Yes, but who's not?
Right.
Who's not?
No, that's sound advice, man.
Yeah, heck, when we came in, we were I came on the 20th of January 1993. That's the same day President Clinton took office, and the big thing then was a don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
And so I came in and I was labeled as that profanity. And so I was, this generation. So I was this generation before, and I've done okay.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
And I think I'd certainly appreciate it. I'm a firm believer in that this generation, we're all different, but we all, just like you said, man, have something significant to contribute, and we'd all be better off learning to understand each other better than pointing out differences in you boomers and you young people. So
Yeah.
Okay, hey man, that's all the time that we have for today. I really want to say thank you. I definitely appreciate all that you do and your friendship. Before we go, let me just take a minute to thank a few people who always makes this possible. First and foremost, our very special guest, Master Gunnery Sergeant Scott Stalker. Thanks to all the folks who submitted questions, and to our team, Sergeant Walter, Sergeant Brady, Joe Wan, and of course the big-headed PA, Senior Master Sergeant Harry Kibbe. And lastly, thank you to all the future leaders out there who are taking care of our teams. This has been your Blueprint Leadership Podcast. I'm Kay Wright, your 18th Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. And remember, if better is possible, good is never enough, and you are your greatest competition.